Hi everyone, no major news today, so let's get straight into the data. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe to help out the channel, and let's get started. So looking at fear and greed, you can see everything was basically flat. A week ago we were at 70, yesterday we were at 78, and then today we were at 78. Strength and momentum, no changes there. Looking at breadth, still hovering pretty flat considering that markets are still quite strong. Put call ratio, still in extreme greed. VIX really pulled back quite a lot here today, and then looking at junk bond demand as well as safe haven demand, still sitting in extreme greed for both of them. Moving over to seasonality, it seems like we're getting the election year performance at this point where we get sideways chop into the rest of the month. Historically, it's pretty much down into the end of the month and then a little bit more into the beginning of March. But you can see the dash lines, election years tend to be a little bit flatter during this period. And that seems like what we're getting at least here in the short term. And markets were pretty flat today on the 23rd. We expected it a little bit of down based on the historical data. And obviously we got the massive rallies with NVDA. And then today we got that flat price action. Moving over to the economic calendar just for a moment, there was really nothing on the calendar for today, and we will get into next week's calendar in the Sunday video. Moving over to Max Pain, it looked like we were going to get a kind of middle of the road finish until the NVIDIA earnings announcement. Then we pushed up to 507, which ended up being very close to the top of the puts. We didn't quite get there. The 508 call wall did hold. Obviously 502 did not. We ended up finishing between those, right in that little valley here between 507 and 508. So still pretty strong, but not as strong as it could have been. Total options up to 1.5 million. Nothing super interesting here. And then moving over to the charts quickly here, you can see on the day we ended up 0.07 to the upside, nothing crazy. We did fall a little bit more after hours. We broke the 9 and 21 EMAs here on the hourly chart. So that's not super convincing. It's a little bit bearish going into the Monday session. Something to keep in mind there. Again, sideways chop, but a little bit of dips and rips over the rest of the month. So wouldn't be crazy if we did see a little bit of a pullback. Got the 55 EMA sitting down at 502. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. So a little bit of weakness at the end of the session. You can see the big volume on that sell candle as well. Fairly interesting. Obviously on the daily chart, still a very bullish structure, pretty extended from the 9 EMA. Last time we got this extended, you can see we did have a pretty big gap down from that Monday session into Tuesday. And now we're pretty extended here again. So keep that in mind. Almost hit the trend line, didn't quite get there. Then pulled back a little bit, falling after hours. Moving over to the Nasdaq, similar thesis, sideways chop, big wick to the upside, got all the way up to 440, which was pretty interesting, and then gave it all back, next candle straight down to the 21. Sideways chop into the mid session, got below 438, and then sold off 3 really strong candles in a row on the hourly, momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Support down at 433.24. Got a bunch of EMAs and SMAs on the hourly chart sitting below that at 432. And then looking at the daily chart, you can see it was down 0.29%. Not great. Again, 433.24, and then the 9 EMA sitting at 432.22. So it looks like that's probably where we're headed. We did get a little bit higher on that initial wick high than the previous high going back to Monday. But then we gave it all back and we did not get a new high close. So keep that in mind. This looks a little bit bearish again going into the Monday session. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, a little bit different thesis here. Both of these were up 0.23 and 0.19 respectively. Momentum continues to fade on the Russell, still in this consolidation, still holding in the middle of the range. Not doing much anything, momentum fading, like I said. RSI, slightly bullish. We did have a positive close. In terms of the 9 EMA, we closed basically right on top of it. 199.89, 9 EMA at 199.88. And you can see we're down a little bit after hours, so nothing crazy there. And then the Dow gapped higher, tried to throw a big wick, fell a little bit into the end of the session. Let's look at that on the hourly chart, see if it's similar. Yep, so big wick early, sold every single candle the rest of the day, and then selling a little bit after hours. Still holding above the 21 EMA at 390.83, so that could be an important level. If that breaks, then I would expect to push down to 388.70, so bearish momentum, RSI bearish. Moving over to the MAG7, big gap higher, through a big wick, ended up closing below the trend line. So this trend line continues to be important. Similar to what happened last time, through some big wicks, ended up pulling back to the 21 EMA, tried to retrace and then fell even lower, and then we got sideways chop for quite a long time. That was from July all the way up until about November. So sideways consolidation. So sideways consolidation for the MAG7. It seems like that's kind of what we're setting up for here. Big wick high, looking for some rejection back into the middle of the range, and then we'll see what happens. That would fit with the seasonality thesis for election years as well. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple really tried to go higher and it just could not do it. Gapped higher and then immediately pulled all the way back to the trend line, all the way back to support at 182.37. If you want to trade this level, it's definitely an important level. If this holds, could get a nice little move higher, but if this breaks, then you're looking for 179.69, and then below that I have 176.15. So keep that in mind. Could be a good trading opportunity, good risk reward from that level. Momentum basically flat, RSI breaking down, so not super convincing there. But last couple of times we've come into this area, it has held. And then looking at Tesla, again, just could not get above 197.75. So touched it once again, broke back down, still holding the 21 EMA at 189.93. Momentum starting to fade here. RSI definitely fading. Probably going to retest that 21 EMA at 189.93, and then I have my level here 188.50. So watching this critical zone here right in the middle of this range. Nothing super convincing. It's been trying to go higher, but this does look weaker now here to me. Tried to break out, rejected, consolidated, couple of tests. Looks like it's fading. And if that 188 level breaks, then my next level here 177.70. Highly traded zone down here at 182.92. So couple of levels in there, but looks significantly weaker now on Tesla. Moving over to Microsoft and NVIDIA, we'll continue to cover these as long as they continue to be relevant, which is probably every day forever. Looking at Microsoft, gapped higher, fell back into the middle of that range, right at the trend line. 9 and 21 EMAs sitting around 407.60, 408, so critical zone in there. If that breaks, I have trend support all the way down at 395. That could be pretty interesting. Momentum still ticking towards bullish, RSI a little bit bearish, so mixed signals, looks like consolidation. And looking at NVIDIA, gapped higher, got all the way up to 823.94, so massive move there. And then gave almost all of it back, ended up positive at 0.36. Volume still really high on that, momentum slightly bullish. We said the trend line up around 855 was the resistance, and we almost hit it. We got pretty close and then gave it all back. Let's look at that on the hourly chart as well. You can see it continued to rally after hours, sideways chop, big wick high, very strong rejection to the 21 EMA, and then closed below the 9 and 21 as well as VWAP. 55 EMA sitting at 743. So pretty weak on the shorter time frames. You have a highly traded zone here at 777.82. Again, NVIDIA continues to be a colossal runner, so I wouldn't bet against it, but you can make an argument for a little bit of short-term bearishness. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, this continues to be a rotation play in my opinion. Discretionaries tried to show some bullishness, then we got an inside candle here today. That looks bearish to me going into Monday. And then staples 0.31 to the upside, got all the way up to 75.16, so almost hit our price target already, and then pulled all the way back to the trend line and closed right on top of it. It's actually up after hours, so that's pretty good as well. So let's look at that on the hourly chart. You can see big push, consolidation, rallying up after hours. Staples looks strong up to that next level, 75.40. Discretionary is right at this topping formation. Looks like it's going to break down in my opinion. Still needs to get below 180.10 if you're trying to play it to the bear side. Still above all the EMAs and SMAs. It's been consolidating in the same range for a while, going back to mid-December. So not super convincing, but I wouldn't short it until below 180.10. Moving over to breadth, both of these were positive on the day, 2.5 and 3.0. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. So we are seeing a bit of an upswing on breadth. We're seeing markets kind of widen out here a little bit. Could be setting up for a little bit more of a run across the broader markets, not necessarily in the MAG7. We looked at that chart, like I said, and that looks a little bit weaker to me here. And that looks weaker to me, but overall breadth looks okay. You can see left shoulder head, right shoulder kind of forming, breaking out above the neckline, potentially pushing to 77.46. And then we have a clear breakout here now on the 20-day average, pushing back up to that 86.50 level. So a little bit of bullishness across market breadth should prop up markets, even if we're not rallying super aggressive. Moving over to yields, pretty different thesis here than what we had going into the day. You can see both of them were down a little bit. 10-year yield falling very strongly, way stronger than I would have expected, well below the trend line, well below the 9 EMA, momentum bearish, RSI breaking down here. Not great, definitely changes my thesis a little bit here. That would push us down to 4.17 as your next price target on the 10-year yield. It is technically right at the bottom of this consolidation, but the structure here has broken. And you can see we tested that 4.35 level twice, hit it on Thursday, touched it again here today, and then broke down. So that could absolutely lead to yields pulling back a little bit more over the next few days. Not a whole lot, but it definitely looks more bearish than it has here recently, which could give equities a little bit of breathing room. Moving over to the dollar ended up positive on the day. Pretty interesting. 0.02 to the upside, so not super convincing, but we had a clear higher low here. Let's go and extend out that trend line. Not really that close. I thought it might have been closer, but still a much higher low than the previous low. We're seeing a little bit of a rally into the end of the session. Momentum basically flat from yesterday, but still technically stepping towards bearish. I think if Monday we see a step higher here, that could be interesting. Then we might see a little bit more dollar follow through, which would be bearish for markets. Right now, the dollar is in a potential bottoming formation, but we haven't seen any kind of confirmation on either of these charts. Just keep this in the back of your mind going into Monday. Moving over to bonds, J&K continued its little uptrend here up to 94.82. Touched it, pulled back a little bit. Momentum ticking towards bullish, RSI bullish here. So again, the thesis is still a push back up to this upper resistance at 95.37. That continues to be intact. Last time we tested this, we did pull back. We're here again. We'll see what happens if we get that upswing or not. And then looking at TLT, absolutely a shift in direction. Again, I was expecting the 10-year yield to break out. It did not do it. It did break down. And with that, TLT went higher. We are at the highly traded zone. We're right there on top of it. We are right at that trend line in the 21 EMA sitting at 94.17. Has a little bit of room into that area. Momentum definitely stepping towards bullish. RSI breaking above the SMA, not quite above the 50 line, but it does look pretty good, especially with that big move. Could see another swing like this where you get a couple of days of really strong push and then we get a pullback. 21 EMA is your current resistance. Could have bought here on the break of the 9 EMA at 92.97. To me, still definitely mixed signals, but potentially interesting here for a push up to 96.50. Moving over to volatility, you can see move index breaking down massive, VIX also breaking down massive, 5.44%, momentum rolling over, RSI rolling over, looks super weak, 55 EMA at 13.35. Got the trend down here in that same area. That's what I would be looking for. Then we'll see what happens there. Current momentum says this should break down, probably down to 12.75 again. So once again, we tried to get up into this range. We did hit it once here on Tuesday. Very quickly rejected. Did not get into that 18.50 area. So pretty interesting. It's still a little bit elevated, but does look weak going into the Monday session. Moving over to my accounts, I did manage to make a little bit of money despite the fact that the Nasdaq was actually down on the day. I took off those puts and calls that I had going into the session, which were fine. And then you can see here, I ended up putting on a 436 call for Monday. I had a 437 and I actually rolled it down at the end of the session. You can see after hours, we ended up falling almost down to 436 from 436.78. So quite a bit lower after hours. Did look weak into the end of the session like we talked about. And then I still have the strangle. I actually rolled down the calls here to 452 from 460. Collected a little bit more credit there. So have the strangle on, still have the covered call on, $1.69 protection there for the Monday session. And then IWM, no changes here, continuing to hold that. It was up a little bit. Call was basically flat on the day. Max profit there, 202.30. And then TQQs, I ended up selling a 58 put. For next week, I had a 58 put going into the end of the session. 58 put, rolled that out a full week for 67 cents. We'll see if I hold that on the Monday session if it looks super weak. I still have a 55 call here for next week as well. So plenty of protection there, $4.39 of protection. Puts the max profit there at 59.39, and we are basically there, especially with the move after hours where we're like right on top of that. So overall, managed to make a little bit of money on a day where the Nasdaq was down, so not terrible. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of that end of market price action. Does that matter, or is that just short term people closing out their positions? And we'll see a continuation Monday. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.